I think about being a teenage girl and having your mom leave and having such a complicated relationship with her. Now you're with your dad, whose role has shifted. I'm sure he checked out, his wife's gone. And
Yeah,
you mentioned at 16, you got pregnant.
I did. So my dad checked out, but what he did is he joined the National Organization for Women, and he started dating the president of our local chapter here in Knoxville. And so on the weekends, he and his girlfriend would be out. I
Yeah.
didn't really have a really good understanding of what was going on with that organization. I knew it had something to do with abortion, but like I didn't really know. There would be picket signs he would have in our living room, these big signs that they would have for some of their marches that he would lead. And there was a big one that was happening in Washington in 1989. It was the Roe v. Wade. And like I said, he was gone a lot. And so, what do teenagers do when when their parents are gone on the weekends? It was just, I had a boyfriend and I didn't know how to say no. Nobody really talked to me about sex or anything. And I was a junior in high school. I was an honor student. I had never done drugs, never drank alcohol. I was just had a boyfriend that pressured me into having sex.
Mhm. And
And
this is why we have to talk about sex with our kids so they
yeah,
know about contraception and what sex is and what can happen. Otherwise, you can get pregnant.
right before my mother divorced my dad, I remember she took me and my younger sister to this kind of like a buffet style restaurant. We were in like this little conference room with all these older white ladies and their sweet tea. And there was a little film that they were showing. And all I remember was just this bloody, gory stuff. And they were talking about abortions and about how horrible they were. I was in middle school at that time and I still liked my dolls. Like I didn't know anything about sex. I remember just sitting there eating the spaghetti or whatever we had and just seeing like all of this gory stuff and these white ladies with this long hair tied up in these buns, no makeup, polyester pants with this looks on their faces of, like how wrong abortions is and you can't kill babies and all of this. This is what happens. And it was horrifying. Always sipping their iced tea with their sweet and low.
I can't even, that image just is so striking to me. And you have no context. They
I,
went to step bazillion without even talking about anything.
so that was what an abortion was. That was it. I
Right.
didn't know how the baby got there and just don't kill the baby. And it's so horrible. If you kill the baby, you're going to be damned to hell if you kill the baby. So when I learned that I was pregnant,
So, how long did it take for you to figure out you were pregnant?
I was a cheerleader and I worked at the movie theater. I remember my dad taking me to work one evening and I had to vomit. And I didn't even know for sure then because I didn't know anybody else that had been pregnant. And I didn't really know that vomiting was a symptom of pregnancy, but I wasn't getting a period. And as the months went on, I knew, but I was terrified. I didn't know what to do.
So, you
And
didn't say
so
anything.
I didn't say a word.
Yep.
I didn't say anything to anybody. I didn't say anything, not one word. Two of my older sisters, one was in vet school at the time at the University of Tennessee. My other sister was working on her social work degree or her master's in social work at the university also. And then I had another sister, my oldest sister, and she was living with her boyfriend. So I didn't really have anybody. There was nobody for me to talk to that I felt safe to talk to. I didn't know how to tell my dad. I didn't know what to tell him. And so I just didn't say anything. And he asked me one day, he did ask me if I was pregnant. And I said no, because I was just
Oh,
terrified. No, I'm not. I don't want my parents to know I'm even having sex, much less let them know that I'm pregnant. And I got to a point where I couldn't fit my clothes. I was still cheering at the games, and there was a time when the guidance counselor actually pulled me aside and she came to one of the games and asked me about me being pregnant. And I lied to her also and told her I wasn't. Then I just stopped going to school because I couldn't fit into my clothes. And so my sister, who was in vet school at the time, she came by our house and she just said that she had a dream that I was pregnant. I honestly don't know if she had a dream that I was pregnant or if they really knew I was pregnant but didn't know how to talk to me about it. So they asked her to do that. And the reason I say that too is because she got married in December. There was a picture, it was a picture of our entire family, and I looked pregnant. Like I looked pregnant, but nobody said anything to me.
Hindsight.
So I really think that they knew, but
Yeah,
nobody wanted to disrupt the wedding. Nobody wanted to disrupt her special
sure.
day. So nobody says anything. It was March when she came and said that, and I just broke down and started crying. And she's like, "Well, we have to tell dad." And I was like, "Okay." So she and my other two elder sisters, they came over, and my dad came home from work, and we sat down and they said, "Melanie's pregnant." And the first thing he said, "Is it too late for an abortion?" And my sister said, "Yes, it's too late for an abortion, Daddy. It's too late for that." And he started to cry. And my social work sister said, "Well, you can't, Daddy doesn't need to pay for this with his insurance because this will break him. So we need to get you on welfare." So they set up an appointment with me at the welfare office.
Yeah, that's every family's first reaction to the news.
Yeah. I didn't know what welfare was either. I had
Mhm.
no idea. I had no idea what food stamps were. I had no idea what any of that was.
You're 17.
I was 17.
This is what support looks like. Okay.
So after we told my dad about me being pregnant, I had had no prenatal care. My first time I went to a gynecologist was the very first time I'd ever had my legs up in stirrups. I'd never had a pap smear or anything. And they said I was a high risk pregnancy because of how far along I was. And they scheduled me an appointment to come back like in July or August, which was ridiculous because they said, "Well, isn't she like 7 months pregnant already?" And they said, "Well, that's just the soonest we can get her in."
Oh my God.
So I never went back to the doctor. I went and stayed with my sister who was living in an apartment on UT campus, and she worked nights.
Because it's too much for daddy.
It's too much for daddy. I think too that I wanted to be with her because I felt like I was getting more emotional support from her too. I just felt safer there. He just shut down.
Yep.
Um, I had talked to her about that recently, and she said, "Well, I thought you wanted to come." And I said, "Well, I did, but it wasn't your responsibility. You should not have had that responsibility. I had a mom and I had a dad, and they should have been there for me, and they weren't. You were in vet school. It should not have been your responsibility." But anyway, that's where I went. And I was only there with her for a few weeks. And I felt like I had to go to the bathroom. And I go to the bathroom, and I keep pushing and pushing. And it just hurt really bad. And I didn't know what was going on. She finally came home from work and I was crying. And I told her what was going on. And she was like, "Well, maybe we need to go get you a laxative." And then she was like, "Well, let's just go to the hospital just to be sure and what's going on." So by the time I got to the hospital, I was already crowning, and they took me into a delivery room, and I pushed out a 4 pounds. I think she was 4 pounds 12 ounces. She was healthy, but she was premature. I screamed probably the most painful, loudest scream I have ever screamed. And my father was in Washington with the Roe v. Wade marches. My mother was in Georgia building a new house. And my sister, who was in vet school, was the one who was with me during that time.
I'm so sorry, Melanie. It is not acceptable.
I carried that shame for years that this was all my fault. I've
Mhm.
carried so much shame, the shame of my birth mother, the shame of my adoptive mother, and they let me do it. They just let me do it.
It just it just I'm not going to cry because I'm going to try really hard not to, but it makes me so sad and so angry at the same time.
Thank you.
Mhm. So you have your daughter.
I have my daughter. She's
Mhm.
beautiful. She was a beautiful baby. And her grandparents on her dad's parents were very helpful and very hands-on with her in helping me. So they were more involved in her life really than my parents were, I guess. I moved back home, back into my dad's house, and he's still doing his stuff with the National Organization for Women, and I have a baby. Well, then I meet another boy and get pregnant again. Baby number
And
two.
I just want to say this is not uncommon. I met a lot of young women that this happens to. People are like, well, duh, don't you know you happened once? How come you're repeating it?
Right.
But it's not that simple.
It's not that simple. And I think about my younger self and why, what, again, I just didn't have the ability to. I was 17 when I met my second baby daddy, and he was a couple of years older than me. And he had a car and he had a job, and he would come pick me up and he would come pick me and my baby up. He showed me attention that I wasn't getting anywhere else.
Yeah, it's because none of those issues that were there before the first child have been addressed. They're still
Nothing.
there.
Yeah. So
They,
I get pregnant again. And so when my dad finds out I was pregnant, he drove me and my daughter to a homeless shelter in downtown Knoxville and dropped us off. This was right in the middle of a crack cocaine epidemic. I had never seen drugs. If you would have shown me crack cocaine, I wouldn't even know what it looked like. And my sister worked at the shelter.
okay, I have to hit pause. So, dad, I'm pregnant. I need help. I need love. I need support.
He said,
Help
I'm not going
dad.
to raise his children in his home. That's what he told me.
And then, so his action is to take you to a homeless shelter?
I think, and nobody's ever told me this, but I think that this was spearheaded by my sister who was in graduate school getting her master's in social work, who thought she had the answers to everything. And daddy, if she wants to raise a family, then she just needs to be responsible. And I think that's kind of where that came from.
I know how to solve this problem, dad. We'll just drop her off over here. I know this place. I work here. I volunteer here. Okay. So, somebody who's lived a sheltered religious life, like you said, no drugs, no nothing, all of a sudden you're you're in the center of it all.
Remember when I first got there, it was a huge building. It was like 3 stories. It was in downtown Knoxville. It was called Volunteers of America. This shelter housed families, men, prostitutes, children. It was not like just a women's shelter, or was it just a pregnant women's home? This was a full-fledged homeless shelter. I remember walking up the steps and going in, and they had like the little lobby area. And then there was like a little room, I guess, where you would go and do when you get checked in. Then my sister showed me and my daughter to our room, and there was this, as you walk down the hall, there was a really big room. And that room was specifically for prostitutes and transients so that they could come. They had to be there by, as long as they were there by midnight, they could just kind of pile up in this one room. And then they had to be gone by like 6 in the morning. It was something like that. But there was a stench that came out of that room that was mixed with, like, it was something I had never smelled before because my parents didn't drink alcohol, they didn't smoke cigarettes or anything. So all of this was just like, all this was in my face. But the smell was like body odor mixed with alcohol, very pungent. I can still smell it. That smell is something I would smell every day when I walked by that room when the door was open. And my room was just a few doors down.
That's what every pregnant person needs.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how long were you there for?
I was there, I want to say maybe about 3 or 4 months until an apartment opened up for me in government housing. So I moved from the shelter into government housing in the middle of a crack cocaine epidemic.
So you had good neighbors.
I can tell you this. I lived in these apartments from 1990 until so between the time that I had my second daughter, I earned my GED, spent some time at Job Corps, ended up going to a community college, spent some time there, and then was able to transfer to the University of Tennessee. And at that time, they had married student housing available for students. So you didn't have to be a graduate student to live in married student housing. You could, if you had children, you could live in married student housing. So because I had children, I was able to move from government housing into married student housing. So that's how I got out of government housing.
I poked fun a little bit. I mean, but I lived in low income housing when I was young, and some of the
Okay.
nicest people that I've ever met. And there's some strong people there. And sometimes
Yeah.
that sense of community and neighborly help is just beyond what
Oh,
I think you see in just your standard white suburban space.
honestly speaking, Black women saved my life. I met some incredible Black women that I'm still friends with today in those apartments that showed me how to find childcare, that showed me how to get turkey baskets for Thanksgiving, which was, just extra food, showed me how to use public transportation, showed me how to use the laundromat. I didn't even know how to use a coin laundry machine. I'd never done that before.
Those are things your parents are supposed to teach you how to do. That's the job of a parent, right? To raise functioning adults in society.
My mother said directly to me, "You made your bed and now you have to lie in it."